Hello guys, my name is Aubrey Mast and I'm with North Carolina Research Campus in Kannapolis. I specifically work with North Carolina State University's Plants for Human Health Institute, and I'm also a part of Cooperative Extension. So a little bit about me and my background. I have a master's in public health. I am a certified holistic health coach as well as a master herbalist, and within the Cooperative Extension model I am tasked with extending nutrition research, which is what is happening at the research campus. This is our beautiful campus. This is our building, North Carolina State University. The Plants for Human Health Institute is housing 6 faculty right now from researchers that are from all over the world. And we research plants in particular, that may be fruits, vegetables, or herbs, for their human health benefits. We are also in the same building as Appalachian State University. Appalachian State is one of our partners, and they do a lot of exercise physiology, so how to run long distances, how to have muscle recovery, things along that nature is what they are covering. We also have Dole in our building, and as you guys know, Dole is one of the largest food providers in the world, really, and so they are researching what makes a banana good for you, and what are the compounds found in that banana that make it yellow or make it good for your brain. And then our next door neighbor in this building right here is UNC's Nutrition Research Institute. So the research campus is really unlike any other campus found in the world. We house 8 university partners. So there's North Carolina State University, there's Appalachian State University, UNC Chapel Hill, UNC Greensboro, North Carolina Agriculture and Technology, and North Carolina Central is there, as well as Appalachian State. So all of us are together, all these universities are together, and we're all tasked with researching human health. And that in itself does not help in any other place in the world. There's no other facility that has all these different institutes with researchers coming together from different modalities, researching one common theme. So we are all doing things tasked on reducing disease prevention, reducing diseases, gaining information on prevention, and how to help the body be more mobile, but also how to withstand a lot of the stressors that we encounter on a daily basis. So within my institute, the Plants for Human Health Institute, let's see if this goes forward. Here we are. I am the program coordinator for the series that you're sitting in today. It's called the Healthy Living Series. And what I do is I work with these researchers that have been researching different crops, blueberries, walnuts, elderberries, various herbs, fruits, and vegetables. And I sit with the researchers, I comb through all of their research, I figure out what are the themes, and I turn it into language and applicability that everybody can understand. So I'm really the middleman, if you will, between the research and how do you use this research. So we are really focused on finding and researching plant-based health solutions, and that can mean a variety of things to our institute. It can mean how a plant withstands interactions with stressors, like whether it's high winds or going through a drought, or it can mean what makes a blueberry blue, and how is that blueness in that blueberry preventative for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and how can it change your gut profile. And then we can move all the way to using blueberries, high concentrations of blueberries, let's say 2 cups of blueberries, and putting them in the form of a functional food, because the reality is most of us are not going to eat 2 cups of blueberries in one sitting, right? So if you are using blueberries as a preventative, how can we make that into a concentrate, which would be a functional food in this matter, so that it's user-friendly and people can have access to those high quantities in smaller doses. So we are on the spectrum of all human health and health maintenance. That said, all of our research is at the plant-based models. We have one researcher that's doing animal models. We tend to partner with other universities that are doing human trials. So the research that I am presenting to you is at the beginning of that understanding. None of this has been applied to human trials. I want to make that very clear. So a lot of the connections that I'm drawing have not been implied yet. with humans. So, to begin, my series it focuses on how do you prevent diseases and illnesses, chronic diseases, and how do you use food as a mechanism, because food is medicine, and it's been documented since Hippocrates' time. All disease begins in the gut. This is one of the oldest statements that we know that records that food can be medicine. And so the basis of most of the research I'm going to present with you today is how do you reduce inflammation, which most of the time looks at how do you change your gut profile, which if you're changing your gut profile, this is from the moment the food enters your mouth to the moment it exits your body. That whole process of digesting food plays a significant role on preventing diseases as well as acquiring illnesses. It can increase your chances of an illness, and it can also decrease your chances of an illness. And so the gut interaction is basically the way that we are able to absorb vitamins and minerals, as well as the phytochemicals, which are the compounds found in fruits and vegetables that really give it the punch. That's what we study for their role within cardiovascular disease, cancer, memory. Those are the most potent parts of fruits and vegetables. And typically all of our research looks at the color compounds. So the big words that you would hear are anthocyanins and proanthocyanins. These are the phytochemicals found in fruits and vegetables that give it the color. It's a color pigment. So today we are going to be talking about the recipe card I handed you guys out. It is called a superhero mishmash. We have trialed this with a bunch of fourth graders around the county, so I've had their approval, and I feel like if I've got their approval, I should hopefully have adults' approval too. And there's 5 different crops in this recipe that have all been researched by the Plants for Human Health Institute. So I'm going to move through each of these crops for you, and we'll cover a little bit of the research, and then at the end of the presentation, you'll be able to taste it. And in the meantime, if you have any questions on anything that's coming up, feel free to ask at any point in time, because I think that's how we all learn from one another. So the first crop I'm going to be talking to you guys about is quinoa. Has everybody had quinoa before? Okay. It's a grain alternative. I have a son, he's got a gluten allergy, and so we have to, and he's got a rice allergy too. So we use quinoa in place of rice or in place of pastas. It is a small little grain typically found in Peru or in the Andes, and it puffs up to twice its size when you soak it in water or when you cook it. You can use it for a breakfast substitute. You can make it oatmeal bars, quinoa bars with them. And then you can also do a dinner, a savory meal with it. So the research that we were looking at the Plants for Human Health Institute on quinoa was looking at what happens when you soak the quinoa, which is really one of the ways that we get it to increase digestibility. This is true with most grains and with most beans and with most nuts. If you soak them, it breaks down cell walls and it makes it a lot easier for your body to digest it. So with quinoa, when you soak it, what we were able to find is that water that you're soaking it in has the ability to impact glucose and glucose levels. So this is very important for somebody that is diabetic or pre-diabetic, which a lot of our food choices move us towards that pre-diabetic state. It has the ability to impact glucose as well as insulin resistance. So it's helping stabilize glucose levels while aiding in the insulin. 2 really big factors for our diabetic patients in that area. It is also considered a superfood because it's considered a complete food. It has all the macronutrients, which are the big nutrients you need: calcium, phosphorus, potassium. And it also has micronutrients in it, selenium. So it is considered a complete food because you get everything you need in one form of quinoa. You're getting the macro and the micros. You can get protein from quinoa, and you can also get omegas from quinoa. And omegas are really good because they are like an essential fatty acid. If we put gas in our cars, omegas act like the gas in our bodies. They help increase our body's ability and our brain's ability to talk to one another and the hormones to interact. And it also gives us ability to be mobile and not be so achy. So the leachate, the water that we've soaked the quinoa in, has the ability to help with insulin resistance as well as glucose stabilization. The quinoa in general is offering us a complete profile of food. And then we're also looking at that water for diabetic wound healing, because we know diabetics have a really hard time with wound healing. It takes them a lot longer. And so the water itself has actually been shown to help stimulate the wound healing process. In that, because this is a complete protein and a complete food, there's a lot of good research that's happening around quinoa consumption and osteoporosis prevention, because it is bringing all of the vitamins and minerals to the forefront of your meal. Does anybody have questions on quinoa? Yeah?
So if you soak it, you shouldn't drain the water and then add new water. You should keep it in the water that it's been soaked in.
That's a great question. Did everybody hear her question? Yeah. So she asked whether or not you should keep and cook your water in the quinoa or in the water that you've soaked the quinoa in, or should you drain it off? And the answer is you should cook it in the water you've soaked it in. And that's the same for black beans or walnuts. Basically what happens when we soak those foods is they start pulling off their volatile oils. They will start releasing a lot of those powerful phytochemicals into the water. And so when we drain it, we're draining off those really important things. Yeah.
As far as the raw and the packaged, like I said, the raw quinoa, I mean, it takes a while to really cook it. Like you get the packaged stuff, you like mix it with hot water almost, and like 10 minutes it's ready.
Right.
Nutritional difference between the raw and the prepackaged.
I don't know that there's a nutritional difference. I will say though, when you soak the quinoa, the dried form, it increases the it decreases the cooking time. So you're sprouting it open, you're breaking open that cell wall by soaking it. And so like I cooked quinoa for you guys, and I think it was done in 6 minutes this morning because it had been soaking. Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you.
So could you survive on quinoa alone? Like if you only ate quinoa, that would be a balanced meal because of all the different nutrients in it?
It would, so you could survive off quinoa alone because it's a complete food. However, like we need other vitamins and nutrients and phytochemicals and colors and fiber and lots of other things besides just this one food, right? So like I will never be a proponent of just the grapefruit diet or just the quinoa diet, you know, like we need to have varying foods coming in our diet. But yes, you could just subsist on quinoa. It's kind of bland though, so you will want to like spice it up and flavor it up if that's what you're really wanting to do. Any other questions on quinoa before I move forward? No? Okay. So the next crop we are going to talk about is walnuts. And when we come to eating the recipe, if anybody has a tree nut allergy, please let me know because I have purposely left them out. But walnuts are, again, to go back to the soaking period, what we researched at the Plants for Human Health Institute is a walnut extract. So this is where we come in and we take the oil out of the walnut. A similar thing happens when you soak the walnut and you start breaking down the cell walls, it starts releasing its oils. If you're gonna soak walnuts for consumption, they're a long nut. You want to soak them for 12 to 24 hours to get them to release and break down all of these oils. Cashews are like within 4 hours. So there's some variability there. With the walnuts, they are an amazing source of omegas and the omega-3s. So they're helping with the brain and brain functioning, your brain talking to one another, and also with memory retention, especially when they are paired with blueberries. They increase the ability to remember things and to fire your signals and your thoughts a lot quicker. So walnuts are great with omegas, providing brain health. And they are also have been researched from us with the extract being linked with cancer cell prevention. And so what has happened with the walnut extract and the research that we were able to do is that a cancer cell tends to want an acidic environment. Typically, this is an environment that is has a lot of access to sugar. We know that cancer cells will multiply when they have access to sugar or a sugar-rich environment, and so that leans toward acidity. What happens with the walnut extract is that it goes into the cancer cell, and the cancer cell has a pH level of either acidic or alkaline, depending on if it is able to repopulate itself. And it will turn it from an acidic environment to an alkaline environment. The reason this is important is because if you can have an alkaline environment to cancer cells, they're not multiplying. So this research is really important in terms of being picked up for more cancer prevention research. And it's very high in antioxidants. It's a source of a micromineral called selenium, and selenium helps to form glutathione, which is one of the most important antioxidants we have in terms of giving you energy, helping your brain function properly, but also helping your organs respond effectively. So that's walnuts. Does anybody have questions on walnuts before I move forward? No? Okay. So the next one is like the star of the show, blueberries. Our institute has done a ton of research on blueberries. Yes, ma'am?
I'm sorry. So should you soak your walnuts before you eat them, or are you getting what you need if you just eat the walnut?
You are getting what you need if you're just eating the walnut. Absolutely. There are a lot of people that talk to me about how they don't like the walnut because it's bitter, or because it gives them a grainy texture in their mouth, or that they have problems digesting it because it's a really meaty nut, if you will. And so if you soak the walnut, you can blend it a lot easier and make a pesto with it, and it will take on more of a smooth texture. You can actually add it into your smoothies as well as a protein source that doesn't give you that grainy texture. So you can do either or. Does that answer? I mean, both are going to give you what you're looking for. Either way, it's just a listening to your body on which way is it feel better to consume it. Yeah, good question. Okay, so blueberries are a superfood because they are impacting every single system in your body. To come back to this, all diseases begin in the gut statement, blueberries are super powerful because as soon as we eat them, they start changing the bacteria in our stomachs. You have bacteria in your stomachs. Everybody has bacteria in their stomachs. You have good bacteria and you have bad bacteria. If you have an overgrowth of bad bacteria, you're likely to not digest your meals as well. You're not going to absorb vitamins and minerals as easily as you would if you had a balanced of good bacteria. So that's why you start seeing a lot of marketing for probiotics, right? This is bacteria that is good, that helps us digest food a lot easier and increases our ability to absorb vitamins and minerals. So blueberries, when we start eating them, they are a rich source of prebiotics, which you probably have not heard of. Prebiotics give food to probiotics. They will make probiotics. So when we start eating blueberries, they start offering our body prebiotics to turn that into probiotics. So they have the ability, as our research has shown, to change your gut profile from an environment where there's a lot of bad bacteria growing and you're not absorbing your food to an environment where you're able to absorb your food better because of having a probiotic-rich food source. So that's how they impact digestion. Blueberries also have the ability to impact memory. Like I said, if you pair the walnut with the blueberry, it has the ability to help with memory retention. And there's a ton of research going on with our institute as well as UNC's institute on consuming blueberries for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's prevention. And that research is at UNC's system in a human trial and is very promising. And so what basically happens is the antioxidants, the colors found in these blueberries, help to coat neurons and they help to increase your ability to remember things better. And in terms of immune system support, so the blueberries are changing your gut profile like we just talked about. In that changing your gut profile, that is reducing the stress load on your body because you're able to absorb vitamins and minerals. And when you reduce that stress load on your body, you're reducing inflammation in your body. If you reduce inflammation in your body, you are reducing your risk of varying diseases and illnesses. If we are in an inflamed state, which usually means an acidic state, we have increased our likelihood of a lot of different illnesses because we're putting stress on our bodies. So blueberries support the immune system by reducing that inflammation. They are also very good for people that are trying to manage blood sugar levels and glucose levels. They help with that glucose balance. So they're impacting nervous health, our brain health, gut health, immune system health, cardiovascular health by reducing that inflammation in your system as well. And they are really antioxidant rich. And so that brings me to this question about wild blueberries. So a lot of our research has been looking at wild blueberries, and this is very important because wild blueberries are exposed to the elements, right? Like we have these commercial blueberries that are pretty large that we can find at Harris Teeter right now, and they're not coming from around here at this point in time in the year. And then the wild blueberries are really tiny, and they're very, very potent because they've been exposed to the elements. The reason why eating a wild blueberry is a lot better is because that plant has been exposed to the stressors. So it's released hormones to protect the plant. When you consume that plant that's been exposed to those stressors and those elements, you are absorbing that plant's ability to protect itself. So therefore, it is doing the same thing in your body. So if you can find wild blueberries, it's the best.
Where do you find them? I mean, just
You can actually find them at any of the grocery stores.
really?
Specifically, it will say wild. Like this morning, or yesterday, I went to the grocery store, maybe it was yesterday, and I found wild frozen blueberries. It has to say wild on it. Yep.
Now, would the wild also be ones you grow yourself? Because I've seen people, some people grow themselves. I mean, that to say wild as well.
It depends on what kind of cultivar you purchased originally, on whether those would be considered wild or not. Yeah. And I mean, really, it depends also on what they're being exposed to and soil environment.
I was going to ask about the wild blueberries. Kind of goes into, this is not, of course, plant-based, but like they were saying, wild salmon, you get
Yes.
some things that you don't get in
Yes.
farm-raised, whatever.
Yeah, this is the same consensus no matter what crop we're talking about or what food we're talking about. Is wild different than commercial? And it is different, and that's because the food is exposed to these elements. And whenever the food's exposed to those elements, it releases a protection mechanism, which then is something that helps protect us. Yeah. Yes?
So how about local produce that is grown here in this area, exposed to the elements because it's grown outside in
Right.
season, but maybe isn't the cultivar from like a wild species of blueberry? Is that not as good because it hasn't had as many natural selection in the great outdoors to make those hormones better?
Right. So I think the standpoint that I'm going to take is really politically correct, right? Eat blueberries. No matter what. No matter what kind you can find, eat blueberries. And is it supporting local economy? Very important, right? Because if we have blueberries, that means the bees came and pollinated them. They're exposed to our environment, so they're releasing stressors that are typical to what we would encounter. They're going to help impact your health no matter what. Is there a big difference between a wild blueberry and a commercial grown blueberry? Yes, but do both of them impact your health in a really beneficial manner? Absolutely. So whatever ones you can get access to them. It's really politically correct, I know. Yeah.
The same way with the walnuts. I mean, this is more for people from the local people like to answer this.
Oh, yeah.
There's not a lot of black walnuts around with the black walnuts locally. I mean,
Right.
there's nothing. I mean, like there's more husk and shell
Yeah.
than nut. And so I mean, but the ones you buy at the store, like I said, huge.
Yeah.
There's no difference between those.
There is difference between them, but they're both going to offer health benefits, right? So I think on a personal standpoint, I'm always going to stand by local foods over foods that have been trucked from wherever. I just want to have a buy-in to my local economy because I think it's very important. So it's really whichever, again, you can get access to. And I know that there is, like nutritionally, if we were doing a profile analysis, there would be a difference between them. Yeah. Any other questions on blueberries? I'm sorry? This is the standard question, okay. So how many should you eat a day, right? So as many as you can. Yeah, as many as you can. So yeah, what a lot of our research, the common theme within most of our research analysis is around 1 cup a day. Okay, that's a lot for somebody to eat. That's why we start looking at functional foods. Can you put it in an extract? Can you put, for you smoothie drinkers out there that have protein powders or greens powders, that's how they add it in there so you can get access to that 1 cup. That said, this is the buy-in too for individualized nutrition. My genetic code is completely different than yours, so what I need for my body is completely different than what you need for your body. And that's why UNC's system is doing a lot of research on individualized nutrition, which is where you would go to your doctor and they would do a blood analysis and say you absorb this well, you don't absorb that well, and you should have this amount of vitamin C versus that amount of vitamin K. Because there's no nutrition's not a one size fits all, and it will never be. It's just dependent upon what's best for your body. And I know that it feels like a scapegoat answer for me, but that's also the reality of it. Yes?
I do have a question. It's off of food, but you said inflammation is a stressed environment. Stress causes diseases and stuff, but inflammation is exercise.
Yes, true. Right. That's absolutely right. And so that's where we've worked a lot with like Appalachian State. What happens when you go and you do a large amount of exercise and you leave the exercise inflamed, right? And also, how do you get the oxygen to your body after doing so? I think when I say inflammation, I mean a diet that's really processed, that is eating a lot of foods that keep you in a very acidic state, and stressors that you encounter on a day-to-day basis that are causing that inflammation. I tend not to refer to it as a muscle inflammation, which you're right is completely different, and the research is pretty prolific on like blueberries, green tea, bananas, any fruits and vegetables to eat after that muscle has been torn and that inflammation has been released to help with the rebuilding of the muscles. Thank you for that point. I appreciate that. Anybody else? No? Okay. So the next crop that we've researched is cinnamon, and cinnamon has been used for a long, long time in varying different therapies. And so typically it's been used as an anti-diabetic treatment. It binds and it helps manage glucose levels, so you tend not to see blood sugar spikes whenever cinnamon has been introduced. And it also helps with weight management. So one of the easy things with weight management and fat cell loss is lemon juice, some cinnamon, local honey, and apple cider vinegar, and it helps bind to fat cells and pull the fat cells out. Cinnamon that we were researching was really looking at how it has the ability to impact glucose production from a genetic level. We all have the genes, right? We did this human genome a couple of years ago, and so one of the genes that we have impacts how we metabolize glucose. And what we found with cinnamon is when it's introduced at a genetic level, it changes the body's ability to metabolize glucose. So it's very important for somebody that has a family history of diabetes and high glucose levels. Cinnamon is also really heavily researched within blood pressure because it helps clear arteries. It helps bind to plaques in the arteries, and so it helps strip those plaques from those arteries, and then it can reduce blood pressure levels that way as well. And it's also currently being researched, not at our institute, but at another institute, for its role in cancer prevention. It's because it's a really big anti-inflammatory from the color. Yes, ma'am?
Do you think that there's a lot of difference between, like, say, if you got cinnamon sticks and you boil them versus cinnamon that you get that's already ground in the shaker?
Mm-hmm. She asked, is there a big difference between if you get cinnamon sticks, you boil them, or if you get powdered cinnamon that we can all purchase at the grocery store? So what we know in research in general is that whenever you can get the food in its more raw form, the more potent it's going to be, right? And so the powdered cinnamon that's a whole other conversation really on spices, on how we process spices, especially spices we don't grow in the United States, how we get them into a powdered form. and consume them. I would say the closest you can get to the raw form is better. There are 3 different kinds of cinnamon, and they have varying levels of curcumin, which is the compound that makes it that color. That's what we are researching to be really helpful. And so you would have to go find a cinnamon that is part of those 3, which the most potent one is Saigon, and then there's a Ceylon. And those are the 2 that would be the most commonly purchased in the United States, but they're also the most potent. Yeah, thank you. That was a good question. Anybody else have questions on cinnamon? No? Okay. So the next to the last crop we're going to talk about is winter squash. I think all of you will attest to carrots being good for your eyes. We've been told that, I think, since I was like really little, Remember 16 candles and they were talking about carrots being good for your eyes. And so the reason carrots are good for your eyes is because they are rich in vitamin A, okay? Winter squash, all orange crops are also really rich in vitamin A. And the reason why this is important is because it helps with your eyes, but it also helps with skin. And so the 2 areas that have been looked at within winter squash in particular are using it to help with wound healing because it helps with skin healing, like making a puree and using it topically on top of a wound to help it heal. The other piece that we're really looking at, and the research is not even complete yet, is the storage of it. So what happens, right, we grow winter squash, we pull it off maybe around October, and then we store it or we use it and freeze it immediately. What we have found in the lab is that the longer you let it store, the higher the vitamin A concentrations go. And this is across the board with all different types of winter squash, which is really interesting because most of the time we think when you pick a tomato, it is at the height of its nutritional profile, right? But what we're finding with these root vegetables in particular is that the longer you let them store, the higher their concentrations go. And it is rich in the antioxidants because of that yellow beta-carotene color, and that's really what's helping with skin, hair, and eyes. Anybody have questions? Stored, well, like our ancestors did, would do it in root cellars, right? I keep mine in a cabinet that's a dark cabinet, and it's just out of the way that way. Really what you don't want to do at all is put them in a refrigerator. Do not store them in the refrigerator because it will actually stop that vitamin A from increasing. We have found that it gets too cold for them to withstand that. Yeah.
So my family grows pumpkins, and the inside of this one particular variety that they just grew for the first time last year is bright orange. It is like the most orange pumpkin I have ever seen.
Yeah.
And it was also huge. It took me all day to cook it. But it is now in my freezer. Does that mean it has more vitamin A than like a different variety of squash or pumpkin that was not as orange?
More than likely. However, it's going to have different compounds in it, right? Like, so when I say that we look at vitamin A, there's all these precursors under vitamin A that make up vitamin A. This is where the phytochemicals come in. Like, so in the nutrition world, you have vitamins and minerals, and then below that, you have all these subset of families that make up that vitamin or make up that mineral. And so we're looking at the families below. And so they could be more rich in beta-carotene for that color that you're just talking about, that real vibrant color, but there could be another compound in there that is not necessarily as high as a butternut squash, right? Like, I would have to look at the analysis really to be able to answer that like directly and to a place that I'm like, yes, I can stand on that science, you know? Yeah. Any other questions on butternut squash? No? Okay. So the last thing I'm going to tell you about that I did not make a slide for, there's kale in your recipe, and kale is a superfood because it's dark green, okay? So your dark greens, broccolis, cabbages is not really dark green though, collard greens, Swiss chard, spinach, things that are really this dark green. We have been studying the brassicas steroids, which are basically the steroid compounds found in these plants. And the reason they're important is because, to come back to your muscle inflammation question, they help with that muscle recovery. They will help you grow new muscle. So they're reducing inflammation in that manner. And the reason they can do this is because they are bringing oxygen into the body. So the dark greens are considered superfoods because they help oxygenate the body, and that reduces inflammation upon your cardiovascular system. It helps support your immune system as well. So the kale is in here, but you could easily swap it out for Swiss chard, collards, or anything that you would prefer. And so that is all of the superfoods that we have studied in one fantastic recipe. So the last thought I want to leave you guys with before we open up the forum is the food you eat can either be the safest and most powerful form of medicine, or it can be the slowest form of poison you choose. And I think that this is a very important part to take, because we live in a society where our food system has changed drastically within the last 50 years. And we have now come to a point. I taught 100 fourth graders last week, and half of them did not know what a blueberry was. They had never seen a blueberry before. So I think that this is an awareness that we all can benefit from, is that the food choices you make may play an important role in your body today, but also long term. And so that is my presentation on healthy living and the crops that we have researched at the Plants for Human Health Institute. I would love to pass out some samples so you guys can try what I have talked about regarding research. But does anybody have any questions before I wrap up?
So, two general questions.
Yes.